Hello, lovelies. So all month long here on the channel, we are going to be celebrating the arrival of autumn with some of my very favorite comfort food classics. And today we are going to be making a nice big batch of this savory chicken orzo that is absolutely delicious. It basically encompasses all of the yumminess of a classic chicken soup, except for in a pasta dish that can be made in under 20 minutes and all in one pot. So there is a lot to like about it. Now I am getting started here with my nice big skillet on the stove. I like using something with a nice heavy body like this cast iron skillet, but of course use whatever nice big pot you have on hand. And we're just gonna start by melting some butter here. If you don't wanna use butter in this recipe, you can go ahead and use some oil instead. You can keep this dairy free if you want to. I love butter because of course not only does it grease your pan, but it adds a ton of beautiful flavor too. And it smells so good when it's melting. Come on guys, so much to like. Now, as soon as that butter is completely melted, I am going to add my veggies to the pan. Now, like I said, we're trying to capture the essence of a classic chicken soup. So you'll see my veggies are very classic in a chicken soup, starting with some onion here. I've also got some celery, and I've got some carrot headed in here as well. And I'm going to let those cook away, stirring them frequently for between 3 and 5 minutes. I really want to give those veggies a chance to soften up. You'll notice the onion will become nice and translucent and your celery will turn bright green. And that's how you know it's time to get even more flavor into the pan. And to do that, I have got some minced garlic headed in here, as well as some fresh thyme leaves that I've just removed from the stem. Now, if you don't have fresh thyme, you could swap in some dried thyme here. That will definitely work. But I have to say that fresh thyme is always worth the time if you can find it. Seriously. So we're just going to let those get nice and hot and bothered in our pan for between 30 seconds and a minute, and then it's going to be time to add our chicken to the pan. So this is one of those amazing recipes because it actually uses leftover chicken. Now, I cooked some roast chicken on the weekend, which is what I'm using in this recipe. You could do this with a rotisserie chicken that you get at the supermarket and pull it apart. Or if you just celebrated Canadian Thanksgiving like I did, you could also do this with leftover turkey. That would be super delicious. The other option, if you only have fresh chicken on hand, is just to cook your chicken before you add your vegetables. That is totally fine as well. Point being, you have options. And we just want to get our chicken in the pan and tossed around with all of those other amazing ingredients. And then we can go ahead, guys, and add our orzo to this. So you've probably seen me cooking with orzo more often. Elle absolutely loves it, which is why you're seeing it in more and more of my recipes. If you don't want to use orzo in this recipe, which is basically just sort of a rice-shaped pasta, you can always go ahead and use some rice instead. You'll just want to adjust the cooking time to make sure your rice gets nice and tender. And then as soon as our orzo is in the pan, we can go ahead and add our chicken broth to this. I have got some nice, good quality chicken broth headed in here. And the chicken broth is basically going to be what cooks our orzo. And what you'll notice is that the orzo is going to absorb all that liquid, and you're going to end up with a nice, tender pasta that is super flavorful. Now, the last step, just before I let this cook away for between 8 and 10 minutes, is just going to be seasoning it liberally with some salt and some pepper. Really just depends how much salt is in your chicken broth. If your chicken broth is already really salty, you may want to hold back a little on the salt. Totally up to you. Now at this point, I just want to bring this mixture to a nice boil. And as soon as it's reached a boil, what I'm going to do is reduce my heat to medium-low, pop a lid on my dish, and then let this cook away for between 8 and 10 minutes. Now, it's really important to stir it every 2 minutes or so just to prevent that orzo from sticking to the bottom of your pan. And what you'll notice after about 8 minutes or so is that your pasta will have absorbed all of that liquid, and what you're left with is this super creamy dish that will remind you a lot of risotto. Super, super tasty. Now the final step here, guys, is just going to be adding a bit of freshness to this. I'm going to do this by stirring in just a bit of fresh parsley. And honestly, this dish is ready to be enjoyed by the entire family. Oh my gosh. It's basically like chicken soup pasta. I hope you guys will give this one a try for yourselves, and if you do, be sure to tweet me, Instagram me, or Facebook me a photo because you know how much I love seeing your kitchen creations. Remember, this recipe, like all our recipes, is featured on healthymealplans.com, our really handy meal planning site that allows you to browse more than 1,000 of our recipes, drag and drop them into your weekly meal plan, and automatically generates your shopping list so you can take it straight to the supermarket. How great is that? And finally, guys, if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell because there is lots more deliciousness where this came from.